Here is the Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a good day it was indeed. Joe Biden in Pittsburgh. Big speech on infrastructure. Very happy to see it. I'll tell you right from the start, caught my attention. Came out and said right from the beginning, I'm a union guy. I'm a union man. I support unions. And I'm going, there's my guy. That's the reason that I support Joe Biden. There's the guy right there. Now, he rolled out his American Jobs Plan, which, again, I think is a step in the right direction, something we need to be doing. I said, look, this is a once-in-a-generation investment in America. And I would go, we've skipped a couple of generations. This is a once-in-a-couple of generations jobs plan, and it's one that, hopefully we get some folks behind. Now, he also went on to say, yes, it's big, yes, and it's bold, yes, and we can get it done. Now, there are some who are saying, not quite bold enough, and I'm one of those. I think it should have been a little chunkier, a little bit bigger, but then again, I'm always in the, I would like to see it a little bit bigger, a little bit chunkier. If it were me, I would want the $4 trillion, but 2.3 is a good start. And look, Biden said, these are my ideas. If you've got some more, you've got some better ones, you got some, bring it on. Bring them forward. Let's debate it. Let's see if we can get this done. Now, as we talked about earlier, the plan yesterday was, I guess they said $2.3 trillion was going to be the number. They're pretty close. They said about $650 billion in investment in rebuilding our infrastructure. Those roads and those bridges we drive on. Also our water system, our transit systems, all that stuff. The thing we think of physical, our roads and bridges and stuff like that. Also, some money for human infrastructure. Yeah, I know. We don't think about that very often, do we? But we the people, little investment in us. I think a good idea. Also, they're talking about taking care of the elderly, people with disabilities, going to throw about $400 billion into that. Because, maybe we should be taking care of our own. Kind of a thought. Also going to throw some money into affordable housing. Also going to throw some money into reviving U.S. manufacturing, something we should have been doing for decades but haven't. Going to bring research and development back. They're going to throw $180 billion in that. Now, look, there's a whole bunch of money going at very targeted areas that we've allowed to be, destroyed. I mean, we have not invested in this stuff in so long that we've gotten down to this point that, we're in trouble. And, we've seen these stories. The American Society for Civil Engineers, they come out with their report card. Last year, it was like a D+. This year, it's like a C-. What Joe Biden is saying is we're going to get that C- up to a B. We're going to do some tutoring. We're going to get some help in. Kids going to do the homework. We're going to put people back to work, and we're going to do something immediately. Now, look, is the $2.25 trillion, is that big enough? Is it chunky enough? Is it bold enough? I don't think so, but I think it's a good start. It's not Ed Markey's $10 trillion plan. But it's also not the Republicans' zero. Nothing to see here. Move along. Everything's fine. It's not their zero plan either. And understand right from the start, there's not going to be any Republicans throwing any support behind this at all. But, from the bigger, chunkier side of things, to get more investment, look, there are folks who are saying we need investment. In fact, there was just a recent survey put out by the good folks at the Institute for Policy Integrity. Their survey has said that nearly 3 in 4 economists have now come around to the idea that we need immediate and drastic action on addressing climate change. We need it immediately. Nearly 80% of them say that their concerns have grown over the last 5 years. They're now concerned. And it's one of those things that makes you go, welcome to the club. And good, finally, there's some consensus being built that climate change is real and that we can address it and we must address it, because they're saying, look, by 2025, globally, it could cost us over $1.7 trillion in economic activity after that period, and growing. So again, we continue to do nothing. We continue to do nothing. We continue to let it go and do nothing. We continue to do nothing. And what happens? Well, things get worse, things get costlier, and we end up in a scenario where, well, we're down the road and we have no choice whatsoever. And this is kind of where I'm struggling, because, the sad reality is we've been put in this position where we don't have really a choice, where we don't really have much of a choice to deal with. So good on Joe Biden, good on them for moving in that direction. Now, as I said, we're going to get zero support from the Republicans. So you're just going to have to let it go by. Mitch McConnell came out and said, well, this is a missed opportunity. It's full of, how do you put it? It's a liberal wish list, which is one of my favorites. It's this ultra left ideology. It's a left dogma, he says. And I'm going, I don't know, fixing our roads and bridges, investing in the future of the country. I'm kind of not getting you there, Mitch. And look, all the Republicans came out because they're going to raise taxes. They're going to raise taxes on corporate America. Biden's plan calls for, over the next 15 years, to raise taxes from 21% of corporations up to 28%. I'm of the mindset you go back to 35, even though Biden said that's too high. I'm even of the mindset we go back to where it was in 1953 when it was 56%. But hey, we're way away from that. Now, you got this recent study that found out that 91 Fortune 500 companies pay the big goose egg in taxes in 2018. They paid nothing. So does 28, 21, does that matter? Does it matter if they're paying nothing? I mean, that's another study came out and said that it found that average across the board, corporate America is paying 8%. So even if you just stuck it at 21% and said, no, everyone's paying 21%, yeah, we would pull in tons of cash. But this is going to be the beginning of how this is going to happen. Because look, we got to pay for this. And while I am a tax and spend liberal, paying for it is a big part of it. I believe in you tax people, you pay for what you need. I'm not a borrow and spend conservative, because look at what the mess we're in now. We keep borrowing and borrowing. This is a way, and this should appeal to the the conservative ideology of, we need to have we need to have transparency and accountability and all of that stuff. So over the next 15 years, it would be paid for, and actually reduce our deficit, which is really quite remarkable if you think about it. Building our infrastructure in a way that we need, putting money into the economy, getting people jobs, good jobs, and paying down our debt. Think about that. Think about how transformative that is. And like I said, we're going to invest in some roads and bridges. They think that they say they're going to get 20,000 miles of road done and 10,000 bridges. You go, wow, that's good. It's good. Well, problem is 1 in 5, or 173,000 miles of our highway and roads are in poor condition. So 20,000 is a start. It's not the end. 10,000 bridges sounds like a lot, but we got 45,000 of them that are, well, not in great shape. And you look at the fact that it costs us on average about $160 billion a year in traffic congestion costs alone. Lost productivity time. Anybody who's been sitting in traffic knows it's usually they put out a cone to fix something, and as soon as that little Snyder baby goes up, that's it. Traffic dies. So for me, this idea that we're going to invest in infrastructure is a huge thing, and it's a great opportunity to create jobs. But it's also the idea that we're going to use government in a way that hasn't been used in a while. That it's going to be the driver of demand. It's going to be the driver of the future of the country, because this is transformative. This is moving us in a direction of saying, hey, we want electric vehicles. They're going to spend, a good bit of money in upgrading our ability to have electric vehicles, the infrastructure that goes into that. And I know a lot of people, look, I'd love to have a, electric vehicle, but where do you charge it? I've seen a handful of charging places in my travels. Not like you see a gas station on every corner. We can change that. We can invest in that. But as I've said, this is Biden saying we want active government. Now the right wing's gonna go, no, he's talking big government and big government's bad. And I've said before, I don't care what size the government is. I really don't. What I want is effective government. I don't want weak and small and pathetic government. Oh no, let the invisible hand decide. No, I want some actual policy that's going to move us in the right direction. And for me, that's a part of this. Understand, as Biden pointed out, we in the 1960s invested in infrastructure. Our investment as a share of our economy has fallen by more than 60%. Or I'm sorry, by more than 40%. Where'd that money go? Where'd that investment go? Well, it went to creating the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. It went to tax breaks for corporations. It went for tax breaks for the very wealthy. And it was passed on to the rest of us in the way of, sorry, we can't afford that. We're broke. We don't have the money. We can't invest in the future. We can't invest in what your kids need. We are the wealthiest country in the world at its wealthiest moment, and yet our infrastructure ranks 13th in the world. And when you go through and you look at individual things, there are some things where we're not even in the top 25. So for me, this is an opportunity. This is Biden's moment. And, I'll be honest. I said during the campaign, I thought he was too moderate. I didn't know if he was going to be able to rise to the challenge. But here's the thing. Much like FDR didn't run on the New Deal. He didn't run as a radical government interventionalist. He did what had to be done. He put on his work boots, he put on his gloves, and he rolled up them sleeves and got to work. Now, granted, he did it with pen and paper, but he got to work. And this is what I love about Biden right now. He's not engaging any nonsense. He's doing the job. Showing up, doing his work, and moving forward, and bold about it. Now, as I said, look, I think this could have been chunkier. I think it could have been bigger, a little bit bolder, but this is still pretty darn good. And understand, more than the Republicans are going to give him. I don't know that there's going to be a single Republican vote for this. I think there should be. I hope there is. I know we're not going to get to 60 votes. I know this is going to have to go through budget reconciliation. And this, honestly, this is the campaign for 2022 and 2024. If this gets through in the form that he's laid it out, massive investment in infrastructure, jobs for people, and part of it being the PRO Act, giving people the right to join and form unions and actually benefit from the work that they do as we're investing in infrastructure. This is going to be the answer to Trumpism. This is going to be the answer to all of those small communities where you got rabid Trump supporters who the factories abandoned them a generation ago and their union jobs went away. This is a way to reach out to them, and the Republicans lose them. And look, the Republicans know this, which is why you hear them labeling all this stuff, just a liberal wish list. Yeah, it kind of is a liberal wish list in a way. We want workers to be treated fairly. We want them to work in safe working conditions. We want them to have good family-sustaining wage jobs. And we want to invest in our country. We want to move our nation forward, be more competitive around the world. Yeah, if that's a liberal agenda, I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it, and I'll stamp my name right on it. If helping seniors and helping the disadvantaged, helping with the human capital in our country, helping with job training and helping with research and development, if that's liberal, sign me right up. And look, I'd be happy to run on that in 2022. The fact that we had the vision and the foresight to invest in our nation where the last couple of presidents haven't. Now there's been a lot of rhetoric. I mean, we've had Infrastructure Week for the last 4 years was almost every week. There were some great photo ops. Not much in the way of actual investment. This is actually getting the shovel in the dirt. If we can do this right, if we can push the Democrats to get this through, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because there are going to be some who, well, they're upset. They want their little piece. There's talk over the state and local taxes, the SALT taxes. I said yesterday, I hope they keep it in there. If we need to tweak something to help the working class folks who might be affected by it, we do that. But by taking a cap off of the state and local taxes, where we're helping millionaires and billionaires afford their palatial estates while we've got kids who don't have laptops or safe conditions at school, I'm sorry, I'm not going there with you. So it's going to be an interesting fight. And as I say all the time, you got to contact your representatives. They got to hear your voice. They got to know your name. They got to see your letters. They got to see the emails. Because this is that moment. We're in this moment. And I'm going to make the prediction that if this goes through, this is going to be a huge boost to our economy, and 2022 will not look bad. If this does not happen, if for some reason Mitch McConnell does what he does masterfully and block any attempt at progress, if this goes to the Senate and dies where progress goes, 2022 could be a very difficult year for Democrats. This is that signature moment, and Republicans know it, which is why they're united against it. Just like they were united against the rescue plan. They understand the politics. They don't care about you, me, or anyone else. They don't care about the investments. They don't care about the rural investments in broadband. They don't care about the transit investments. They don't care about any of that. It's about winning their election. It's about politics. It's that simple for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. That was the day Dr. Ralph Abernathy, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, arrived in Charleston, South Carolina, to address striking hospital workers and their supporters. More than 400 black hospital workers at Medical College Hospital and Charleston County Hospital had walked off the job earlier in the month. They demanded an end to racial harassment and discrimination, wage increases, union recognition, and the reinstatement of fired coworkers. It was yet another instance where workers' struggles embodied the broader social debates of the day. Struggles for racial and gender equality, as well as the rights of public sector workers to organize, especially in the South, all converged in Charleston. Workers at both hospitals sought out Local 1199, which had already organized hospital workers in New York City. Local 1199B was soon chartered, and Mary Moultrie, a licensed nurse from Medical College Hospital, was elected president. 12 workers were fired when the new union demanded recognition. That's when they voted to go on strike. Picketers were met with injunctions and arrests. The president of MCH, William McCord, stated that he would not, quote, turn a $25 million complex over to a bunch of people who don't have a grammar school education. He and Governor Robert McNair cited the state's right-to-work law as justification for refusal to recognize the union. The SCLC arrived in Charleston to lend its support. Speaking to 1,500 workers and their supporters, Abernathy linked the struggles of Local 1199B to those of meat packers and sanitation workers. He also charged that Congress would rather spend millions on war than to stand people on their feet in Charleston. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this Madison Cawthorn, I guess his name is, Republican congressman from North Carolina's 11th district, in the news and doing what I expect more Republicans. And to be honest, I was surprised so far just him and I think it was Corker, or I think it was him, the guy from no, not Corker, the guy from Alabama, or was it Mississippi? I got Mississippi, who now taking credit for the rescue plan that they voted against. Cawthorn sent out a tweet saying he's happy that North Carolina's 11th was awarded grants from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And he goes through the places that got millions of dollars. And he said, proud to see taxpayer dollars returned. And you go, well, what did you do to make that happen? Oh, that's right. You did nothing. Just like they're going to do on this infrastructure plan. And here to share some thoughts on today's infrastructure plan and the big speech by President Biden, I've asked our good friend Jeff Hauser to come talk with us. Jeff is the director of the Revolving Door Project there at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Jeff, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime, Rick.
So let's start with Cawthorn first. Surprised by this?
I mean, spending money on things that help society is popular. And so you may not want to vote against it, but you'd like to associate your name with it. And I think you're seeing that from a lot of Republicans. There's a reason why bills like the rescue plan and like today's Build Back Better plan typically pass with bipartisan support, because there's really not much of a constituency against the government doing basic things that we need to be a well-functioning society. It's deeply unpopular. I mean, if you live in a world where you don't think you're going to get fact-checked in a way that, gets heard by your voters, go for it if you're a dishonest person like Hawthorne.
But I'm expecting more of that, especially as the money comes rolling out. And really, and the reason I pointed this out is because if Democrats are able to get this through like they did with the rescue plan on a 50-50 vote, and without any Republican support whatsoever, Republicans are going to be in their district going, hey, look at this road I fixed. Look at this bridge I fixed. Look at this that I've done, without having any support. And I think we've got to be proactive in making sure that people know that they don't support this stuff.
Yeah. So the trap that Biden seems to have learned from that President Obama fell into was to allow Republicans to determine if you were a success by suggesting that success was bipartisanship. Mitch McConnell knew that cohesion among Republicans could deny the imprimatur of bipartisanship to President Obama. And so far, Biden talks about how much he values bipartisanship, but what's been encouraging is that he generally acts like what he means by bipartisanship is things that will help both Republican voters and Democratic voters, that he cares about being a president for all people, but not for all politicians. And I think that distinction between Republican voters, Republican voter interests, and Republican politicians is an important one. And if Biden keeps that as his North Star, I think it will create greater pressure on Republicans over the long haul.
Now they're talking about $2.3 trillion. You think that's enough?
I mean, I think it's not enough. I mean, there are a lot of needs in this country, and we're talking about a long time. We're talking about 10 years here. We're talking about a big country with a lot of unmet needs. We have a climate crisis, but we have problems that even we would need at least that much even if we didn't have a climate crisis. And there's almost no amount of money that could be spent on a climate crisis that would be wasteful given the severity of the impacts that are already being felt and will be felt increasingly in coming years. So no, it's not enough, but it's definitely significant. It's ambitious. And I think the legislative structure that they find themselves in, so long as the filibuster is maintained, this need to do it in a reconciliation package, to get started now, to make it move before we get into the next fiscal year in October, there are some real genuine challenges that the Biden administration is facing. And so I think it's a a good effort, even if it's not a perfect one.
Yeah, I've said that, it's basically taking that American Society of Civil Engineers report card, and saying we're going to turn that C minus into a B, 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 a B. That's my view. I think we're going to try and get up to a B from the C minus that we're at. We're not going for the A. We're just trying to get to the B.
Yeah, but I mean, they're even under the vision of where the Senate does not get rid of the filibuster. They'll have at least one more reconciliation bite at the apple to add things in. I mean, I guess there's some talk that this might, replace a surface transportation bill, but I don't know that we know that for sure. There are other vehicles, pun, I guess, partially intended, to get some of the spending that we need, both to make America a functioning transportation system and the like. I mean, one of the encouraging things is they're going to try to get rid of lead from drinking water pipes, which, I mean, talk about like basic low-hanging policy fruit. But just because it sounds extremely boring doesn't make it anything other than super important. Preventing kids from being, growing up, drinking poisonous water. I mean, there's a few more important things. So there's a lot of really good stuff here. That doesn't mean they're hitting really good stuff here. That doesn't mean they're hitting everything. There's probably some sticker shock, and the pricing things out over 10 years makes everything sound really big. And that might have been a little daunting, but if something like this, even 80% of this gets all the way through, I think that's a better legislative year than most of us expected Biden would have.
By far, absolutely by far. How much of this do you think is because if I'm the negotiator, I'm going with Markey's bill at $10 trillion. I'm going to throw that on the table, and the Republicans are going to come back with zero, because that's what they are. And then the negotiation happens. But this isn't a negotiation with the Republicans. This is a negotiation, I think, with the Democrats, which is why I think Biden has kind of picked this spot as where people are telling him this might get through the Democratic side. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought it was really interesting that the American Rescue Plan started out at 1.9 trillion and ended up at 1.9 trillion. And so I do think Biden and his team are taking the temperature of Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, and other key swing votes. And I think they do have a plan for passage that where the opening offer is relatively close to what the final offer is. I mean, I do think you're going to see more wheeling and dealing in this one than in the American Rescue Plan, because while these needs are urgent, there's like they're not quite as short a term timetable as maintaining unemployment benefits at enhanced levels, which was, set to go away just a few days after Biden signed the rescue plan in March. So I think there's going to be a little bit more change, but I think what Biden is doing is always appearing reasonable and centrist. And so I think the fact that progressives are going to be pointing out that there's very good basis to go bigger and bolder than he is going, I think Biden's team is smart enough to understand that that is helpful to them. And Biden wants to appear, as he has always long done in his career, which is be at the center of the Democratic Party, not be on the progressive edge, not be on the conservative edge, to be at the center of the party. And so I think the role of progressives is to keep shifting that conversation to the left. But Biden sees his role as occupying the center that results after progressives have moved it to the left. And honestly, this is a conversation way to the left of what was going on in 2009 in the Democratic Party. So, I mean, I think there's a lot for progressives to be happy at in that regard, which does not mean that the critiques from an AOC or a Markey are off the mark. They're right on point.
No, they're on point. But look, the fact that he came out with a plan as big as it is shows me that he understands the moment. And look, I was afraid, I think as a lot of people were during the campaign, that he would come in kind of like Obama did and try to constantly work across the aisle. Do you agree with me that you don't think a Republican's going to vote for this? Because, transportation used to be that place. It was kind of like the trough where everyone went, all the little piggies got their snouts in, and they all brought something home. It was like bringing home the bacon. That's kind of gone away. And there's part of me that goes, is this that moment where Republicans go, we're going to lose anyway? How do we get something to bring back?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is to always bet on zero. And
Right.
that might still be the single most likely answer. I do think the chances of a small coterie of Republicans coming out in support of parts, there are different mechanisms by which this could end up being voted on or amendments within it. The legislative process will be complicated here. I mean, I do think there's a conversation among Republicans about whether or not they messed up on the American Rescue Plan and what their strategy should have been. And by being outside of it and having essentially no meaningful critique, I mean, they were focused on Dr. Seuss and the Potato Head family at the time. They basically let it go through unscathed. It's very, very popular. And, each month that goes by, they get closer to the 2022 midterms, which some of their members care about. A lot of the key people in swing Senate states are not up for re-election, in part because people are retiring right and left. But yeah, like, will some House member want to become known as the reasonable Republican who is willing to vote for popular things? Somebody who got by, barely in the 2020 election cycle? I don't think it's likely, but I definitely think it's possible. I think you could, if you see a special election result between now and the ultimate vote, that starts to create some fear among Republicans if Biden stays popular. I think it's possible, but I think Biden is right to not build a plan around that possibility.
I think you get some of the New York and New Jersey Republicans perhaps in the House. I don't see it in the Senate. And where my thought is the Senate is going to be, McConnell's going to have them all in line. And that, to me is a problem. Yes.
I mean, one of the things that I think escaped a lot of attention in 2020 is that the main Senate race is both an extremely disappointing Senate race and one that I think bears further attention. On the one hand, progressives did an unbelievable job of getting a Democrat well-funded. This started with efforts during the Kavanaugh fight. They built up a bank account of, we will give money that would go to whoever won the nomination. It eventually went over, and defeating Susan Collins rightly became a national cause. And Collins got outfunded, but the main thing that she had going for her that kept that funding from being a tidal wave was she got a huge amount of private equity funding from Blackstone and Stephen Schwarzman and the like. And I think Susan Collins on economic issues has moved even further to the right than where she was before, which was always more conservative than she was on some social issues. So I think that the Republican Senate caucus on economic issues is extremely unified behind McConnell's vision, which is ironic because that is not the populist vein of republicanism that Trump kind of laid out for them, that Stephen Bannon laid out, which would be more dangerous ultimately. And I think we might end up, as a result, see the 2022 midterms going better for Democrats, just like the 2018 midterms did, because they don't have anybody who, like Trump, understands how to put forth a populist message.
We'll see, and I hope you're right. But to me, this is a defining moment in the 2022 campaign. If this doesn't get through, and we don't have this investment, we don't get the PRO Act pushed through, this is going to, because I see a lot of this reaching out to those moderate Trump supporters who were the union members, who live in rural America, who have been basically just thrown to the side of the road like trash as deindustrialization and outsourcing has happened. This is, to me, an attempt to try and bring them back into some bit of sanity into the fold. But if it doesn't go through, and I think Republicans understand this, if this doesn't go through, I don't think you get them back.
Yeah, Democrats are going to have to do a lot to get those voters back. They've done a lot to lose them. It's a complicated story, and not everything is the fault of Democrats, but enough is, and Democrats should take responsibility for the things that they can control.
Absolutely.
Which is to provide a credible economic story for working class people. That doesn't mean if they do everything right, they're not going to get 100% of the vote. We don't understand that. But the goal is that is not the realistic goal. The goal is to bring back some people who were willing to vote for the Democratic Party until pretty recently. And I think that the best path forward is to also just do the right thing. When the right thing is really popular, like there's very little excuse for not fighting aggressively for it. And this is a bill that will be on its face extremely popular.
And this is where I'm going with this, because people vote on how they're doing. The Reagan question: are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And this is that kind of a thing. Are people going to be better off in a year, in 3 years, when they have to go back to the polls? Are things going to get better? Are they going to have jobs? Are they going to see activity going in the right direction? All the polling says people are feeling confident. The economy's on the right track. Biden's got things going in the right direction. Policy-wise, we're all heading down the same path. I think when people start to do better, a lot of the craziness gets tapped down, and we start moving towards some bit of sanity.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a story told by Democrats as to why what they did is also responsible for the change. Because obviously there'll be a large amount of money saying this was inevitable, that once the COVID-19 went away, like things were going to get better. And the more you've done to take control of the story about the economy, the better. And honestly, I think the more you make Mitch McConnell the face of the Republican Party, the better. I mean, I hate Donald Trump. I hate him like I've hated few, if any, other people on the planet. But as a political opponent, as a target, as someone to rally around, I think the Democratic Party would do better to make Mitch McConnell the face of the Republican Party than Donald Trump. I think McConnell, he's never been a popular politician in Kentucky. Now the state is Republican enough that he typically wins, does win re-election every time so far, but he is not even well liked there, let alone anywhere else. His manner is as imperious, arrogant, like a weird blend of bland and arrogant, which like very few people can carry that off, but Mitch McConnell can. And he literally exists to make rich people happy. And I think if we make him the face of the Republican Party, that will help the effort of making Democrats have a good midterm election. So pass this bill, make Mitch McConnell the face of the opposition, and steamroll him. And if that over time requires something like the PRO Act, getting rid of the filibuster, having Mitch McConnell whining, being the face of the Republican Party, that is not a winning midterm election message for them.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Good stuff as always.
Thanks for having me.
Our good friend Jeff Hauser, Executive Director of the Revolving Door Project there at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Check out their website, therevolvingdoorproject.org. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1883. That was the day that cowboys went out on strike. The cowboys worked in the Texas Panhandle. Increasingly, the ranch land in the region was coming under the control of large corporate ownership. Cowboys saw their way of life changing. Work as a cowboy had always been hard. They often slept under the stars or in a tent. They worked long hours at tough physical jobs. At the end of a long day, all they had to look forward to was a simple meal of camp food. But it had been the practice that cowboys could retrieve part of their pay in newly birthed calves. Some cowboys were also allowed to round up unbranded cattle. In these ways, they could create small herds for themselves and get a stake at independence. But the new corporate owners clamped down on this practice. They also placed restrictions against cowboys gambling, carrying weapons, and drinking. Seasoned cowboys from 3 ranches gathered to plan a response to the changes. They penned a letter and sent copies to 5 large ranches. It read, in part, "We, the undersigned cowboys of the Canadian River, do by these presents agree to bind ourselves into the following obligations. First, that we will not work for less than $50 per month." 24 cowboys signed the letter, but the ranchers were able to hire scab labor. The strike ended in defeat. change had come to the Panhandle, and not in a good way.
I think I'd rather ride the rain.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So part of the discussion is about creating those good jobs. And in the fact sheet that the Biden administration put out, they write creating good quality jobs that pay prevailing wages in safe and healthy workplaces while ensuring workers have a free and fair choice to organize, to join a union, and collectively bargain with employers by ensuring that American taxpayers' dollars benefit working families and their communities and not multinational corporations and foreign governments. That's the kind of stuff that I would be saying. That's why I'm so thrilled that we have a president and an administration that's not afraid to say that. And here to share some thoughts on just how big that is. And the fact that Joe Biden started his speech off today as, I'm a union guy. I think that's pretty important. I've asked Tim Schlittner to come talk with us. Tim is the communications director for the Afl Cio. Tim, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure, Rick. Good to see you.
So let's start with that. I mean, right from the start, yeah, Joe Biden, come on. I'm a union guy. It's who I am.
As you were reading those words, I was hearing them to the tune of music, because it is music to our ears to have a president who is using the bully pulpit to make a strong case for the cause of unionism. I think there was a reference in that 25-page fact sheet to good paying union jobs 25 times, once per page. Obviously, during the speech, he talked about the cause of unions, how unions can be a solution to our economy, to a lot of the problems we've seen with inequality, with racism, and with building back better. You know, we say at the Afl Cio, we need to build back better with unions. And today was just another reminder that we have a real ally in the White House.
No, I was happy to see the speech, and look, there. I know Mitch McConnell had nothing else to say, but it's just a liberal wish list, and what was it, ultra liberal dogma or some nonsense, because they can't attack the fact that this is investing in our country. This is helping people get good quality jobs, and that's the only argument they've got to claim it's some liberal conspiracy or nonsense.
I thought the Republicans were for infrastructure spending. That's what I've been hearing for 10 years. And there's infrastructure week every year where we have Democrats and Republicans, the Chamber of Commerce, the Afl Cio, all saying we need to build. Well, the president's just put up a plan to build back better with unions. He's gone big, he's gone bold, like he said. He had his FDR moment today in Pittsburgh. And to me, it's time to get on board or get out of the way. And Mitch McConnell's in the minority now, so we don't care much what he thinks.
And I'm hoping the Democrats hear that message from you and do what they have to do on this. Now, a lot of people were surprised that he included the PRO Act in this, something that I have been calling for months now, that I want this to be in. I wanted it in the last bill. Are you happy to see this in there? I guess that's kind of a dumb question, but are we happy it's in here?
Ecstatic. Absolutely thrilled that this is part of the first plan. We see the PRO Act as fundamental to reforming the economic rules, the systems that have kept working people down for too long. We think it's a total sea change. We think it's a sea change from presidential predecessors of both parties. I saw something in the Wall Street Journal today that talked about this is a departure from both the trickle-down economics of Republicans, the neoliberal economics of Democrats. This is the way FDR approached it, that we need big, bold policy, and we need more people in unions. We have 10% unionism today. There's 60 million who want to join. The PRO Act would create a path to get them into unions. A bigger union movement means so many great things. It means higher wages. It means more healthcare. It means more equal opportunity. And it means safer workplaces. And so we just see all of the problems in society have one important solution, and that's a bigger, stronger labor movement and a voice on the job for everyone who wants it.
So we're hearing a lot about the PRO Act, and this is your business. What exactly would this do if it were put into law? How exactly would it help people?
Well, the PRO Act is the successor to the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in 1935. And unbelievably, not one time has there been legislation to improve the National Labor Relations Act since. It's all been to take away and to unravel workers' right to organize and bargain and have a voice on the job. So this bill, in a major way, would restore that right to organize, would expand that right to organize, would make sure that employers, and Joe Biden talked about this in his video to Amazon workers, would make sure that employers who break the rules and break the law pay a real price. So they have a disincentive to not act like that. So when workers decide to form a union, it's their choice and their choice alone. And it would do a number of things. It would basically phase out the half of all states who have these racist right to work laws on the books that keep workers divided on the basis of race and drive down wages and make workplaces more dangerous. And it would do a number of things to make sure that once a union is formed, a majority of workers vote to form a union, the employer can't take forever on the first contract. Once you have the union, the employer has a responsibility to bargain with the workers to find a first contract. This bill would guarantee that. It does a dozen more things that I don't even have time to talk about right now, but it's major transformational legislation. It's part of this generation's New Deal.
No, and it's fantastic. And I've been saying for the longest time, I just want to see us go back to the original intent of the NLRA, which gave employers not one paragraph of rights, not one sentence of rights, not even a syllable of any right whatsoever, because they understood back then, as I do now, that employers had all the rights. This gave workers some right. And to highlight your point, every amendment to that has been diminishing workers' ability to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Now, I want to bring that to today because, we're waiting anxiously for the vote to come out of Amazon. How would things have been different had the PRO Act been in place as those workers at Amazon were going through their election cycle? How would that have changed things?
Some of the tactics that Amazon has taken would be outright illegal under the act. Some of the tactics would have much stronger penalties against Amazon. So Amazon would have to pay a lot more. Now they have a lot of money, right? So it's important that there's different remedies. Some of the remedies in the PRO Act are if an employer continually breaks the law and forces workers to sit in these meetings, these captive audience meetings where the only thing on the docket is union bashing and puts anti-union propaganda in the bathroom and does any number of things, fires workers and threatens workers for even showing an interest in the union. There's remedies in the PRO Act that could say, you know what, if a majority of workers sign a card to form a union and the employer has actively union busted, well, then the NLRB can step in and say that union is formed. So there's any number of things that in a PRO Act setting would have made this Amazon campaign a lot fairer. Yeah. But those workers are doing a hell of a job, even under the system we have today.
No, absolutely. Regardless of the outcome, the massive victory, the show that you can stand up and fight against the global behemoth that Amazon is. But I think, seeing this firsthand and it being public, a lot of the union busting tactics that are going on at Amazon have been happening for decades, and they've been getting away with it. It's just now that Amazon is such a big player that there's been some real media attention. I think a lot of people are now going, hey, this isn't good. And I think that makes the case for why we do need the PRO Act to make organizing easier for workers.
Rick, there's a multi-billion-dollar business in union busting, law firms, consultants, all people that have made their careers on showing a company how to prevent workers from exercising their free will to form a union. It's really sick. And the PRO Act would put that industry on its heels, and I hope put that industry out of business.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You don't like scab industries, and those are people that I do want to see jobless. But what do you say to the person, Tim, who goes, you know what? You just hate women. What is it that you guys hate women? This is bad for women. And I've heard this so many times. It seems like there's a coordinated effort to convince us to believe that if somehow we pass the PRO Act, that this is going to destroy women's ability to make a living. Do we hate women?
We don't. We love women. We are women. The Afl Cio unions, the labor movement, and women make 78 cents on the dollar in the United States. They make $1 on the dollar under a union contract. Women have more access to health care, a pension, paid family leave, childcare in a union setting. I think what you're referring to is there's been this effort online on behalf of freelancers to talk about the PRO Act as a threat to a freelancer's way of life. That couldn't be further from the truth. This bill would do nothing to impact freelancers who don't have an interest in forming a union. You can go on your merry way freelancing. What this would do is that workers who are misclassified by employers as independent contractors, 1099s, but they're actually employees, they would be reclassified as employees for the sole purpose of having the right to form a union. That's great for women. The PRO Act is a pro-woman policy. It's a gender justice bill. And we are excited that women are some of the biggest supporters of the PRO Act. Patty Murray is the author of the PRO Act in the Senate. So we love women and we love the PRO Act, and those two things go right together.
Now, it's interesting because one of the arguments that I hear from people is I need the flexibility of being my own boss. And I'm going, well, you can negotiate that in a contract. That's part of a negotiation.
That's true. Every bit of flexibility. See, when I hear people talk about flexibility, I always wonder, I better hold my wallet when I hear about flexibility, because flexibility is a code word in a lot of the employer community for taking away rights, for taking away a defined benefit pension, for taking away health care, for taking away hours. Now, so if you want flexibility and you're in a union, you can negotiate that in your contract. And if you want to be your own boss and you have no interest in a union, then you don't have to form a union. But no one's talking about forced unionization. This is about workers and their right to form a union if they so choose. That's what it comes down to. Employers should have no say in whether or not a worker forms a union. And that's what the PRO Act would do. It would restore the decision back in the hands of workers.
No, and that's the place where we want to be, as opposed to Mother May I, which is where we seem to be right now. Let me ask you about the ABC test, because this keeps coming up over and over again. And it's one of those things that I think needs to be explained a little bit, because the freelancers are just freaking out and losing their minds over the fact that, I won't be able to do this or that because of the ABC test, which is the employer can't control your work or the work that you do, can't control your time and your effort. And also it can't be in their normal course of business. You can't have a warehouse and all the workers be independent contractors when that's the main crux of their business. That seems pretty simple to me.
It's a straightforward test. It's in place in a number of states. Obviously, the California Supreme Court upheld it, but it was taken back by ballot measure out there under a lot of pressure and misinformation led by Uber and Lyft. But for the PRO Act specifically, the ABC test is narrow. It would only apply to the right under federal law in the private sector to form a union. If you want to form a union and you're misclassified as an independent contractor, you could use the ABC test to prove that you're actually an employee, you and your coworkers are employees, and you have the right to form a union in the private sector under federal law. The freelance stuff that's out there is misinformation, it's propaganda, and it's nonsense. And we have fact sheets at the Afl Cio that tell the real story about what the ABC test is and how it applies narrowly to the PRO Act.
No, I mean, this is about people having the ability to join and form unions and to classify themselves as workers for that right to join a union. It seems pretty simple and straightforward to me, but I get all of this, again, the propaganda and the misinformation, which seems to be coming from, there's got to be a source that, because they're so on message. I'm sure there's a think tank out there that's somewhere that's putting this stuff out for them.
I wonder, Rick, and I should also say, you can't be a progressive and oppose the PRO Act. Those things don't jive. If you're a progressive, you can't oppose the PRO Act. If you support the PRO Act, then you're for workers' right to form a union. It's as simple as that.
Now, you said this is for private sector only, so this doesn't affect the public sector. This doesn't affect what the Janus decision was, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. So there is a public sector collective bargaining bill that's going to be introduced in the House soon. It's called the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, to make sure we enshrine the right of every public service worker to form a union. But no, the PRO Act is about forming a union in the private sector, where today we have 6% density, and that is a crisis. That is a crisis when we have 6% density. That's not enough bargaining power for workers to have a fair say in their wages and working conditions.
No, I'm right there with you. So what do we do to make sure this happens? Because ultimately it's going to come down to the Democrats in the Senate. I don't think there are going to be any Republicans. Are you targeting any Republicans that you think will come over?
We think there's some possibilities. Lisa Murkowski in Alaska is someone who has a good relationship with the Alaska Afl Cio and has been with us on some labor votes. So we think there's some possibility there. There's also some Republicans who have said slightly positive things about unions. Marco Rubio had an op-ed in USA Today saying nice things about Amazon workers, but also bashing the PRO Act. So there's probably a narrow margin there. But we're going to go after every vote, and we really need to start with the 5 Democrats who haven't yet co-sponsored the PRO Act. 45 have, 5 haven't, and we think if the PRO Act is good enough for 5 Republicans in the House, it should be good enough for 5 Democrats in the Senate.
And not to put you on the spot, but who are those 5?
Those 5 are Mark Warner of Virginia, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Angus King of Maine, Mark Kelly, and Kristen Sinema of Arizona.
How can Joe freaking Manchin be against this? And I wanted you to throw his name out there so I can have this meltdown. How can Joe Manchin, from a state that birthed the UMWA, possibly be against this?
I don't think he is against it.
Okay.
I think he's a not yet co-sponsor. I think all of those 5 are a not yet, and Lisa Murkowski is a maybe. That would put us at 51 votes, and if the Senate changed their rules, the PRO Act would be right to Joe Biden's desk, which he asked for today in his speech in Pittsburgh.
No, the last question I've got for you real quick. My great fear, they pull this out as a bargaining chip. Any thoughts on that?
That would be the worst decision the Democratic Party has made in a long, long time, and they've had some doozies. It would depress turnout. It would be bad politics. It would be bad policy. And it's my worst fear, but I don't think they're headed there. The Senate leadership and the president are very supportive of the PRO Act, and I think that we're going to find a way to get it done.
From your lips, Tim, I appreciate the time. Great stuff, my friend.
Thanks, Rick. It's always good.
Good stuff. Tim Schlittner, Communications Director at the Afl Cio, aflcio.org, their website. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. The nation was in the grips of the Great Depression. Long bread lines formed each day in major cities across the nation, with at least 1 in 4 people out of work. The crisis deepened as the Dust Bowl ravaged farmland, crippling farmers and limiting food production. In response, the newly elected president, Franklin Roosevelt, launched his New Deal programs, signing into law one of the most popular parts of the New Deal, the Civilian Conservation Corps. The CCC was a massive public works program. Unemployed young men ages 18 to 26 were eligible to enroll and to be put to work. They earned $30 a month working on public works projects. Participants lived in camps near the projects and had to send $25 home each month to their families. The size and scope of the initiative was truly staggering. At its peak, 500,000 men were put to work from 2,600 camps across the country. In all, 3 million men participated during the 9-year program. The camps were segregated, and 250,000 African American workers formed 150 all-black crews. During the program, CCC crews planted nearly 3 billion trees, constructed 470 fire towers, built 97,000 miles of fire roads, and constructed facilities at 800 parks. If you see a stone bridge or a picnic shelter at your favorite park, look very closely. You very well might find a plaque describing how the project was completed by the Civilian Conservation Corps. The program indelibly improved the infrastructure of the nation, and it gave participants the dignity of work and the hope for a better tomorrow. Today, as the media reports lingering unemployment and crumbling U.S. infrastructure, just imagine what a program like the CCC could accomplish today, if only we had visionary leaders willing to enact.
Hey you, get away from those polling places. We don't want your kind here. Scram! That's a stupid, shameful, and ultimately self-defeating political message, yet it's being pushed as the official anti-voter electoral strategy of Republicans. Admitting that they can't get majorities to vote for their collection of corporate lackeys, conspiracy theorists, and bigoted old white guys, the GOP hierarchy's great hope is to shove as many Democratic voters as possible out of our elections. They're banking on a blitz of bureaucratic bills they're now trying to ram through nearly every state legislature to intimidate, divert, and otherwise deny eligible voters their most fundamental democratic right. Their main targets are people of color, but they're also pushing to keep students, senior citizens, union households, and poor communities from voting. Unable to come up with any actual need for these autocratic restraints, the GOP vote thieves are fraudulently exclaiming that millions of illegal immigrants, dead people, Chinese, and even pets are voting. These absurd claims have been thoroughly investigated, even by Republican judges, committees, media, etc., and repeatedly they've been proven to be, well, absurd. Let's be blunt. You're more likely to find Bigfoot than you are to find a case of mass vote fraud in America. Even some GOP politicos have quit pretending that they're searching for the big cheat, instead bluntly making an overt right-wing ideological argument for subverting democracy. Everybody shouldn't be voting, explained Representative John Kavanaugh, the Republican chair of Arizona's election committee. Slipping deeper into doctrinaire doo-doo, he asserts that it's not just the number of votes that should matter in an election. We have to look at the quality of the votes, too. This is Jim Hightower saying, I'm guessing that most Democratic voters would fall into his low-quality category. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'll tell you, I'm happy with the speech today by Joe Biden. Thought it was a good start. Move us in the right direction. Good vision. Invest in our infrastructure. Schools being part of that. It's kind of been a love fest for Joe Biden. Here's a moment to go back and maybe beat him up a little bit, because there's some who are saying this push to open schools a little too quick. And here to share some thoughts on maybe if the Biden administration is doing that, or what they should be doing. I've asked Nancy Bailey to come talk with us. She's an education blogger, one of our badass teacher friends. She's written an article, President Biden's ideas about schools and COVID-19 miss the mark. Nancy, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, thank you for having me on your program. And I do start out positively in this blog. I don't want to be the downer here with President Biden.
No.
I agree.
I know
agree.
you said really nicely. You like him. You voted for him. You're hopeful for him. All of that stuff, but missing the mark here. How so?
Well, I think as time goes on and more people get vaccinated, that things are going to get better. So I'm optimistic now about COVID, and I think it was good news today to hear that the Pfizer vaccine was 100% effective. They found in children. I think it was 14 or 15 and over.
Right.
That's really good news. And I think there's a lot of positivity out there, but there are also still some concerns. There's concerns in Michigan. They've had a lot of kids coming down with COVID-19. They've had to go back to remote learning with a lot of their schools. And also in Rhode Island, there have been some increases with children. And so I think there are still some concerns. I guess back when I wrote this post, he had just given his CNN town hall, And I didn't like the idea of saying that schools have to open in 100 days. I never liked those kind of benchmark goals. I guess with things like this, you're not sure how things are going to turn out.
Right.
I think it would have maybe been better if he had said, we're going to try to get schools open and even say 100 days, but we need to make sure that everything's really safe in the communities. And I guess he did say that to a certain extent, but the 100 days reminded me very much of No Child Left Behind when they said that all children would be reading by 2014. Things can just come up where, problematic things with a virus of this nature that we still don't really understand all that well. With children, I think they're not getting vaccinated. So I've always been concerned about kind of this cavalier attitude that kids aren't going to get that sick, Right. Some do, so I think there's still it's still important to proceed with caution. I just that was something that bothered me about that speech back then, and also the continuing talks about learning loss. I think I'm afraid that that's going to really turn into one of the buzzwords they're using now is acceleration, and I really think that young people and children have been through a lot with this virus, and I don't think we need to add on the pressure. And the Biden administration, I think, has gotten some criticism for, sticking up for high-stakes testing. So I think that's a real concern. I don't know if kids need to go back to buildings even to take tests. I think that's. I heard the other day that they might try something in some states where they maybe opt into the test. If parents want to have their child take a test, they can do that.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. We're never going to. Because we've been opting our kids out for years, and it comes down to a bunch of things. Now you've gone through a whole bunch of. I think you ran the whole table on me. So the questions that I had we're going to have to go back over some of that now.
Sure, go ahead.
Because you talked about learning loss there for a second. As a parent, I'm concerned about it like anyone else. Our kids have done they go to school for 2 days. They do the online thing. There's kind of a hybrid thing that I think has been okay. But I don't feel that they've gotten a full year of academic activity in. And I'm personally concerned that they're going to be a little bit behind. I do have faith that they're going to be able to catch up. But is it unreasonable to believe that probably not going to have the same kind of results through this school year that they would have had otherwise?
Well, it's hard to say. I think with all children it will be different, and some children will be further ahead than others, and certainly some had, better access to the computer and to their teachers than others, and some have been in school and out of school. So I think there will be a lot of differences, but I just think there's a way to do that and a way to get kids back on track without a lot of pressure, a lot of assessment. I think teachers are very good. I think there should be more faith in our educators to do the kinds of testing that they know works for them, that will tell them something. Teachers are good at testing. They know how to check on children's work, and they can see whether their kids are moving ahead. And probably most teachers teachers have been working all along, and I'm sure your kids' teachers have too. They probably know pretty well where your kids are at. You probably know where your kids are at. So I think it's still the children who are maybe not getting the help that they need at home that will need maybe some remedial help. But, we set the standards. Adults set the standards that children have to follow. So there's no reason we can't back off a little bit with our kids and let them catch up. And, provide, just the support that they need. Now, one big concern I have is whether or not there'll be enough teachers to cover classes when everything starts getting back to normal, because I think a lot of teachers have left.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit worried about, trying to recruit teachers back. And I really appreciated that President Biden is talking about schools and including schools with infrastructure. But I'd also like to see the administration do something in terms of recruiting teachers who are maybe finishing up their teaching programs in colleges, teachers who have retired. They might be able to recruit them back with some incentives, lowering class size so teachers can really address kids back in the classroom. And certainly I noticed he's putting money into getting computers and making sure everybody has access to devices, and that's a good thing. But I hope that that's not going to be a highly emphasized thing. I think people are really tired of their kids being online, so I'm hoping that there will be some more attention as we go forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are tired of having their kids at home.
I know, at home too. But I think that the fear I have now is that kids might be back in school, but they'll still be on the computer,
Right.
And I hope that there will be some emphasis on really recruiting good, well-prepared teachers back into the classroom.
I'm with you on that. But here's the thing, and this is where my mindset goes in this. We've been at this over a year now. Schools have been shut down for this time period. We've got such a short period of time until the end of the school year. It seems counterproductive. It seems counter to sanity to say, no, we're going to race to rush things. We're here at the end of this journey. We're now going to expose them in a way that we haven't when we're so close to possibly getting people vaccinated. I say we take the summer off, but we'll pick it up in the fall.
I agree. I think that sounds very reasonable. I was almost sorry that President Biden didn't say that. And Dr. Wen, who she's a doctor who quite often is on CNN, she has said, or she said at one point, that it would be better also, I think, that they kind of focus on the fall. And I think, really trying to get schools in order, getting some of those infrastructure situations taken place, getting ventilation issues taken care of, just really ramping up, fixing up schools, and working on ensuring that 3 feet is okay and safe, and checking these things out. I think that might be a better solution. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So
seems like sanity to me. So overall, since you wrote this piece back in February, we're in a better place now than we were.
Well, don't you think so? I mean, I feel optimistic.
I do.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for my second shot, so I feel like things are starting to look up, but I still worry about. I still wear my mask when I go out, and my husband and I are very careful, and so I think that I agree, and I'm saddened that so many states are dropping the mask mandate, and that there are still people who are scoffing at this and thinking that schools should just open right away, and so that is a worry, and I am concerned. I'm originally from Michigan, so I have relatives in Michigan, and there's concern up there. They've really had some outbreaks. Their schools have had to go back to remote, and also I think Pennsylvania has had some increase. There have been increases in cases, so that is a concern.
Right. There have been some bumps. Now, where you're concerned about, releasing the mask mandates, and that's concerning. To me, I'm not so concerned about the mask mandates. I'm concerned that we're stupid, and that people would go without protecting themselves. That's what concerns me. I don't need the government to tell me to protect myself. I'm going to do that anyway. But the number of stupid people who think it's a hoax and have bought into, it's not a big deal. That's my concern.
Right, and I know people like that also who have thought like that throughout the whole year, who haven't believed that it's as serious as they say, or that it's like the flu and that sort of thing. But a lot of things are opening up. I heard the other day, and I think I heard this right, that theaters were opening up, at least maybe around where I live here in Virginia, but that you would be seated 2 seats apart, and I thought that just doesn't seem really far apart for me. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, and I'm still concerned about eating in inside restaurants and stuff. So we get takeout and we're still being careful. And once my husband and I are both completely vaccinated, we'll wait and I think we'll feel a little more free, to do some of these things. And
eventually we're going to get back to normal. Eventually we're going to get there. I'm just not going to listen to the guy who barely made it out of high school biology, who got a cereal box epidemiologist degree, telling me how things are.
That's right. That's probably not to take notes when he's talking.
Yeah, it seems simple to me, but I'm glad to hear things are on the right track. I'm glad to hear you think things are going positively. And I hope that continues. But Nancy, I appreciate you taking some time for us. As always, it's great talking with you.
Thank you, and you take care, Rick. Bye-bye.
You as well. Nancy Bailey, education blogger. Make sure you check out her work at nancybailey.com. We'll get links out on how you can do that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. That was the day Dr. Ralph Abernathy, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, arrived in Charleston, South Carolina, to address striking hospital workers and their supporters. More than 400 black hospital workers at Medical College Hospital and Charleston County Hospital had walked off the job earlier in the month. They demanded an end to racial harassment and discrimination, wage increases, union recognition, and the reinstatement of fired coworkers. It was yet another instance where workers' struggles embodied the broader social debates of the day. Struggles for racial and gender equality, as well as the rights of public sector workers to organize, especially in the South, all converged in Charleston. Workers at both hospitals sought out Local 1199, which had already organized hospital workers in New York City. Local 1199B was soon chartered, and Mary Moultrie, a licensed nurse from Medical College Hospital, was elected president. 12 workers were fired when the new union demanded recognition. That's when they voted to go on strike. Picketers were met with injunctions and arrests. The president of MCH, William McCord, stated that he would not, quote, turn a $25 million complex over to a bunch of people who don't have a grammar school education. He and Governor Robert McNair cited the state's right-to-work law as justification for refusal to recognize the union. The SCLC arrived in Charleston to lend its support. Speaking to 1,500 workers and their supporters, Abernathy linked the struggles of Local 1199B to those of meat packers and sanitation workers. He also charged that Congress would rather spend millions on war than to stand people on their feet in Charleston. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we were talking about earlier with the PRO Act, to clarify, because I got a couple of responses from folks saying, well, the ABC test is going to be horrible. And it really, the ABC test is fairly simple. And it's one of those things that, there's no real mystery here. An employee is someone that you have control over. So what the ABC test says is, in order to be considered a independent contractor, your own boss, you got to be free from control and direction of the person hiring you. So if I'm hiring you to do a task for me, I'm not standing over you saying, this is how I want it done, this is when you do it, this is where it's done, I'm not controlling you. I'm not making you wear my uniform. I'm not making you drive my truck with my name on the side. You're not my representative. You're doing a task for me. The other part is that the person doing the work that you're hiring does something outside the scope of what you're doing. It's not your core business. If you run a warehouse and the warehouse workers, those are your employees. You can't then call them all independent contractors and have them come in and do the work that you would normally do and misclassify them as independent contractors. Can't do that. And the other part of it is, you're in an independently established trade or occupation, in the same nature, in the same area of work. Now, people are losing their mind, saying, well, you're going to take my freedom away. And this does not do that. This says that employees can come together and say that people can come together and say we are employees and collectively bargain. For me, the idea of this, and this is where, in having conversations with these freelance folks, I'm going, this is an opportunity for you to be like the building trades. To be like an electrician or a plumber or a pipe fitter who work for multiple companies under one contract. You're considered an employee. When you work for them, you work as an employee under a contract that guarantees your wages, your benefits, your health care, your retirement, the working conditions, all of that stuff. For me, the way forward for the freelance people, if they really understood it, and which is why I know that this is a hit job from corporate America, who have funded a number of social media influencers to try and tell us, oh, how horrible this is, and it hates women. I've gotten that, just a bunch. What I want to see is freelancers, you take a look at our media structure right now. 30 years ago when I was a kid, you could get a job working for a newspaper as a reporter. There weren't any stringers out there. There weren't many of them. There weren't people who were, just being freelance reporters and submitting stories for $50 or anything. There was none of that going on. They were employees. We've now destroyed the entire profession. And now you have a whole bunch of people working for poverty wages. As were before, those were career jobs. They paid decent wages. They had good benefits. They paid, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. The whole thing to pushing people towards being independent contractors, their own boss, is to shift responsibility. And this happened, during all of my years in the trucking industry. When deregulation hit and the union busting went full bore on, you got, people going, hey, you can be your own boss. You lease this truck from us. So you work for one of these big conglomerates. They tell you, yeah, you can lease our truck. We'll lease it. We'll do a lease program with you. You can be your own boss. Our name will be on the side. You got to wear our uniform. You got to pick up where we tell you. You got to deliver when we tell you. You got to be there when we tell you. You got to get back when we tell you. But hey, you're your own boss. Where? How is that? Oh, that's right, because you're responsible for the maintenance of the truck. You're responsible for the cost of the fuel and the tolls. You're responsible for all of the risk. This has been the genius of corporate America in convincing us that we're our own boss, that we'll happily work 60, 70, 80 hours a week because, hey, we're our own boss because we're choosing to do it. And then when you sit down at the end of the week and you go, well, I didn't even make minimum wage. Because, guess what? Minimum wage laws don't apply when you're your own boss. And you talk to some of these Uber drivers, and the only way they're making it is they're cheating the tax system. And at some point, someone's going to say, we're not giving them more tax breaks for this stuff. So Joe Biden is saying, look, we need to We need to fix this. We need to solidify employment because it's the basis of our society. It's the basis of how the economy works. And I go back to, what good is an economy if it's failing people? It's failing families to be able to support themselves and keep a roof over their head and food on the table. What good is having an economy then? And you look at the anger of the last couple of election cycles. It's because families are struggling. Those good union jobs of the 60s and 70s and into the 80s that, thanks to Reagan's high dollar policy, thanks to neoliberal trade policies, thanks to all of the corporate handouts and the policies that have allowed them to move, you've left people behind. And this is not news. We've known this. We've lived it. And now you've got a president who's saying, we're gonna change that. And earlier we talked with Tim Schlittner, the communications director at the Afl Cio, who said that things would be a lot different at Amazon had the PRO Act been in place. And it would have been. Those workers would have signed cards, they'd have had their vote, and it would have been over. There wouldn't have been months of harassment. There wouldn't have been all the intimidation. There wouldn't have been all of the posters on the bathroom wall. There wouldn't have been people walking through the streets with signboards saying how horrible the union is. There wouldn't be paying the city to change the lights so that they go faster to push people out. They wouldn't be paying the police for extra protection to harass the organizers. They wouldn't be doing any of those dirty tricks and have the union busters that they brought in for $10,000 a day to cause division. That would stop. Workers would simply have the right to choose. Do I want to be a part of this union or don't I? Do I think collective bargaining is a good thing or not? Do I think we can get a better deal? And I'll tell you, put it on the table like that, people are gonna flock to it. Because understand, collective bargaining works. It built the most prosperous generation in the history of civilization in my grandparents' generation. They were able to afford one person working, supporting a family, taking vacations, putting their kids through college on one union job. How many people can do that today? And I look at the obstacles that people have to go through. It's insane. The pendulum has most certainly swung to that side of employers. This is an opportunity to remake some of this. And this is why, look, as I've said a number of times, Biden wasn't my first choice. But I think he understood the magnitude of the moment. We got that rescue plan pushed through. Major accomplishment. Extremely popular. And I'm hoping we get this pushed through with the PRO Act in it. Because this will revive the working class of this country. I look at places that have contracts, and just the other day I was in. I sit in sometimes on these orientations for new employees, and I'm listening to the person give the presentation, and they're going on about how in this room, one of the unions they singled out. You if you're members of this union, you don't get this. And what it was a couple of extra pennies into their pension that this particular union didn't get. So maybe someday you'll get this, but not right now because your contract doesn't allow for it. And made it sound really negative until you looked into it and found out that the union contract of those people who were being excluded from these handful of pennies, their pension actually in retirement was worth $11,000 a year more. They had actually had an incredible benefit. But the person giving the presentation made it sound like they were being cheated. And it's remarkable how corporate America twists this stuff to make people think that unions are bad for them somehow, when the reality is very simple. Union workers make between 18 and 30% higher wages. They are overwhelmingly covered by health insurance benefits, employer-sponsored health benefits, and overwhelmingly have much higher rates of retirement security. Those are facts. And they work in safer conditions. Why? Because they have a voice on the job. And most importantly, they are not at-will employees anymore. They have just cause rights. The only way you can be fired is if you do something wrong. due process, something we used to believe in this country. And oddly enough, the folks down in Texas want to protect the treasonous insurrectionists who are getting fired for their jobs for committing a crime. In Texas, they want to make that not fireable, but still at will for everything else. Mind-blowing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
China is investing 3 times more in infrastructure than the United States is.
Biden previews massive infrastructure investment to address climate resilience and global competition. Deadly torrential rains and floods sweep through Nashville. Plus,
the traffic is resuming.
Stuck container ship in Suez Canal freed, thanks in part to global warming.
Thanks, global warming. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
When you look at how big that ship is, I'm not surprised that it got stuck. And the crazy thing is, that whole ship is just delivering 2 AA batteries. Yeah, the rest is just extra packaging.
True. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the ship is now free.
Yes, that huge container ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal for a week that exposed the fragility of the global supply chain network. Yes, that ship that was freed on Monday, thanks in part to man-made global warming.
Hey!
The massive ship was refloated by a higher than usual spring tide, which was boosted by rising sea levels, which was driven by warming ocean temperatures.
And you say climate change is no good for nothing. See there? You're wrong again.
Here in the U.S., as we go to air, at least 6 people have been killed in flash floods in Nashville, Tennessee, triggered by the second highest rainfall in the region on record. 7 inches of intense rain overnight Sunday destroyed dozens of homes and businesses. More than 100 people had to be rescued from fast rising waters that overwhelmed the city's flood control systems.
Okay, I'm changing my opinion about climate change.
In the first press conference of his term late last week, President Joe Biden focused on the accelerating impacts of extreme weather disasters turbocharged by man-made climate change and gave a preview of his massive $3 trillion infrastructure proposal that he will announce later this week. Biden noted that China's annual investment in infrastructure is 3 times that of the United States. Biden said upgrading the nation's crumbling infrastructure and building out clean energy will increase U.S. competitiveness and productivity, boost climate resilience, revive the economy, and create jobs.
6 to 10 million homes in America still have lead pipes servicing their water lines. We have over 100,000 wellheads that are not capped, leaking methane. What are we doing? And by the way, we can put as many pipe fitters and miners on us to work capping those wells at the same price that they would charge to dig those wells.
And to kick things off, the Biden White House on Monday announced a new offshore wind energy initiative. The Departments of the Interior, Energy, and Commerce will coordinate to reach 30 gigawatts of offshore wind energy projects by 2030. For perspective, construction will soon begin on America's first major commercial offshore wind project. This new initiative targets the equivalent of about 40 times that in 9 years. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki highlighted the initiative's jobs potential.
Meeting this target will create tens of thousands of good-paying union jobs, with more than 44,000 workers employed in offshore wind by 2030, and nearly 33,000 additional jobs in communities supported by offshore wind activity.
Tens of thousands of good-paying union jobs.
Yep. And building and upgrading infrastructure for climate resiliency matters and would save lives. Texas officials doubled the death toll from the deadly Texas blackout in February to 111 people who did not survive the storm, most killed by hypothermia in their own homes because the record winter storm shut down the state's unprotected, unweatherized electric grid.
And that was unprotected and unweatherized because Texas decided to leave it up to the utility companies whether they wanted to winterize those pipes.
Estimates of economic losses from that one single storm could be as high as $130 billion, which, if confirmed, would make the Texas blackout the costliest weather disaster in U.S. history.
$130 billion and 111 lives.
But some good news for breathers in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The Biden administration has withdrawn a parting gift from the Trump administration, revoking a key pollution permit that would have allowed the expansion of one of the nation's largest oil refineries, citing environmental justice concerns and the impact of pollution on the local community.
Good.
And finally, thanks to decades of sustained, intense conservation efforts since the 1960s, the population of the iconic American bald eagle has soared back from the brink of extinction in the lower 48, showing that conservation of endangered species can succeed when we, actually try.
Very good. Maybe we'll play some John Ashcroft music on the way out. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report. Sing it, John.
Let the eagle soar like she's never soared before, from rocky coast to golden shore. Let the mighty eagle soar, soar with healing.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, we're going to take something up with Brad Freeman over at the Green News. I do not want to hear John Ashcroft singing ever again. That was horrible. Brad, what the heck were you thinking? Seriously, something better than that. Anyway, interesting news. Sarah Palin evidently had the COVID, had some bizarre symptoms. She's now saying, hey, everyone should wear a mask. Gee, where were you there, Sarah? Back when it mattered. Just kind of a thought. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend from Ohio Congressman Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick. Was that the former AG that was singing?
Yeah, John Ashcroft, he was letting the Eagles soar. I'm telling you, I may cancel Green News over that.
How did you catch that? I wouldn't have ever guessed that he was singing that.
Well, don't you remember back during the Bush years, they made a big stink about it. They made a big deal that John Ashcroft, it was on CNN. It was everywhere. He was doing the whole, hands and singing. He was like Pavarotti.
Oh, no, I just remembered when Alberto Gonzalez, when he was medicated, tried to get him to sign away everything. Yeah. I remember that.
Well, there was that. But here's the thing. I stop and I think about it. Who would be worse, Ashcroft or Billy Barr? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Gonzalez would have beat Ashcroft.
That's why I didn't throw him in there.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Let's get the top story of the day. Matt Gaetz.
Right.
Not good for him. Not looking good.
Well, I found this one to be very, very weird. And the reason I did is because been there, done it with the Justice Department. And, during the Jack Abramoff scandal that I was, snared up and involved with, I just saw another side to the Justice Department that I really never believed would exist. And I'm looking at this one, and I'm just wondering, when he comes out so public and says, my father was wired up, and I want those wires revealed, what's on them, I'm just wondering. I don't take any, I think, believability in a $25 million shakedown by a former DOJ official.
Right.
They're not going to shake anybody down for $25 million. But there's something back and forth here, I think, in a story yet to be told, because I don't understand. His father was wired up. Did the father catch something on the wire that snared him in? Where did this come from? So I think, stay tuned on the back and forth between him and the Justice Department. Not good, though.
Yeah, and why was the father a former congressman? Why was he wired up?
Right. Well, because we had wires in our office, and the Department of Justice, because, you find out more after your case is over with. You can ask people things. But the Department of Justice said, well, yes, the staffer was wired and provided information. Well, actually, the staffer knew in our office when he talked to the other staffer, he knew the other staffer was wired. They're all wired, And then the Justice Department made it look like they really acquired information off of that when they really didn't. So I'm just wondering, why was the father wired, and what were they actually, acquiring information on? Supposedly another person in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot here that isn't here yet,
right.
But it doesn't look good for him. And
oh no, it doesn't.
And I love the take that some anonymous Republicans are saying, kind of like, we don't really care. We just like him to go away.
That's true too, and people, think that everybody will stick with everybody in D.C. And it's based on personality. If you're liked, they'll give you. Most people will give you some type of, break or at least a second thought.
The benefit of the doubt, at least.
If you're him, you're probably not going to get a break from within your own party.
No. Because it's, I'll be honest. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm not saying that it's false.
Right.
It seems plausible.
Right. But there's something else here, when he comes out and says, well, my father was wired up, why was his father wired up? Why? I don't get it. So there's something there we don't know yet.
Is he done?
I don't know. The fact that he is coming out and saying, I want what's played on that wire, which they can't do because it's probably an ongoing case. The fact he says that may, unless if the department doesn't charge him. Now, if the department charges him with underage.
Yeah, he's done.
Girl, he's done.
Yeah.
He's done. Yeah.
Because if I remember right, there was another Florida congressman who got into the same kind of problem. Was it Foley? I think his name was.
Well, no, that was with him. Yes, correct. But with him, that was with an underage page, and with Getz, and that occurred in D.C. through texting with Foley. With Getz, if this is true, and again, it's alleged. I understand that they went across state lines.
Right.
So that even makes it a little bit more of a jeopardy position for him.
Foley was going after underage boys. And
he texted, which was bad within itself. So they've got the texts and they put them forth. But with Getz, if they're alleging, of course, the department won't say this, but he crossed interstate lines with an underage girl.
Because even if he had relations with her in Florida, that's not illegal. It's the second you cross the line. Because I think the age of consent in Florida, I think is like 16, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So it was the act of crossing state lines.
Well, there's another weird part to this too, where they're saying that he paid for services, and he's saying, I did go. He didn't say that he slept with an underage girl, but he says, I've dated these women, and yes, I've traveled and paid for hotels. But the government, I think, is going towards paying for services.
Yeah,
is what I think they're headed to.
So your gut feeling in this, because you've been around this a long time, is this a witch hunt, or you think he actually did something wrong?
I think I think where there's smoke, there's fire on this one, and there's. Was the questions I had was did the father get wired up and he thought, well, if Dad gets wired up, they let me go, and then something backfired and they found out something else. I mean, these are all possibilities.
Yeah, because the picture of him and the woman who owned the massage parlors, that the New England Patriots owner got snatched up in, That's been making the rounds on social media to say that he's got some ties to that underworld, so to speak.
Right, and again, that's what you can read between the lines. That it's a pay for service versus going on a date. You decide to get a hotel room for the night, and they're more or less sort of beating around the bush there, but it's leading towards a pay for service.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't even care about that. It just of all the other atrocities that this guy's been involved in my view, that's the least of them. Let's move on.
You know how this business goes, Rick. I mean, it's not as much as what they do, although in some cases, it can be really heinous. But it's also this DC where you say, well, can they survive it? It's DC.
No, right. And if they lied about it, it's never really the crime that gets you. It's the cover up that goes after you.
Exactly.
So, Joe Biden's big jobs plan today. Thoughts on the $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan?
Well, I thought what was very interesting, now we obviously know that there's a way that they're going to pay for it. And it will go, the corporate tax rate would go 28% from 21%. And just let me say, if there's ever a time that this would be more acceptable by a lot of people, this is the time.
Yeah.
Because of the fact of, Amazon, which I did misquote accidentally on your show a few weeks ago when I said Amazon didn't pay any taxes. Well, whoop-de-doo, they started paying some minuscule. I forget how much. Doesn't he make $168,000 a minute or something?
Some outrageous number like that.
Something. And they paid a bit.
Yeah.
And let's put it that way in 2018. But the bottom line is a lot of companies do not pay taxes. So I thought with the president going into the the tax plan, which would raise the corporate tax, I think obviously he's going to get less static in approaching that than if there were just outright gas taxes or something of that nature.
Yeah, the fact is they laid it out that 91 of the Fortune 500 paid nothing in 2018, and overall the average across the Fortune 500 was 8%.
Right.
And I'm going 8%.
Right. Yeah, and think what, your average listener, they've got to be thinking now, what did they pay? What percentage?
Exactly. This is
and
where,
they didn't make that much money.
I pay higher than that. And you got these global behemoths who are getting away scot-free. This is how we need to rein some of this in.
Well, yes, so I think what he has put together will have definitely some reception to it, just because where the money will be coming from, and also where the money will be used. It's going to be revamping bridges and roads, $650 billion.
Yep.
Housing infrastructure, $300 billion. Reviving U.S. manufacturing is in there, $300 billion, which is a great thing, and $400 billion for the elderly and disabled. I mean, energy credits. It's a good, plus, hey, let's not forget, the money that eventually they use the Fed money, and they've got more money to fix your potholes.
No, that's
with the local.
That's all good stuff and all investment that needs to happen. But more importantly, and you said it a moment ago, that they pay for it. I am a tax and spend liberal. I've always said that. I believe in taxing what we need to pay for. It's how I do it in my house. When I need something, I pay for it. I don't run giant debts. We fix things. If you borrow money, you pay it back. But you do that by taxing people and raising revenue, and especially the people who have been getting away with it for far too long. I look at this pandemic. A handful of people cashed in about $1 trillion over the pandemic. That's crazy.
Right. Plus the amount of companies that nobody ever dreamed that they didn't pay any or very little in taxes.
It's just crazy. So do you think there's any chance of getting through the Senate? Because like I've been saying for a long time, the Senate is where progress goes to die. Any chance this gets through?
Well, I think it does have a chance because in the House, they can't afford to lose, I think, 4 votes or so. But, if you just look at the past history of these infrastructure bills, they are bills that will receive, I think, bipartisan support. I mean, I would be shocked if it didn't receive bipartisan support in the House. Yeah. And then in the Senate, again, I think it does have a shot this time. I think this is a different creature, and it does have a shot. Now, also, something very, very interesting here. The Republicans in their closed-door strategy meetings are attempting to go after Democrats for corporation support. A lot of corporations have also cut off money from some of the Republicans as a result of January the 6th. So, in a way, a few Republicans may say, okay, corporate world, here you go, and they'll go ahead and support the bill.
I'm hoping you're right. I'm hoping it gets through, and I hope it goes through.
I think it might,
with including the PRO Act in it, which they've done, which I think is I've called for. I wanted from the beginning. I said right from the start, Joe Biden's got to put the PRO Act in the infrastructure bill, and he listened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good thing. So I think it might get the votes. It has a chance.
We'll see how that goes. Last question I got for you. You've been following the George Floyd thing, the trial that's been going on?
A little bit.
Some stuff today made me question a lot of stuff.
In which way?
You can see the way the defense is kind of trying to set this up, that he was on drugs, and that he was out of his mind. They showed some video from inside the store. The guy looked lucid, looked sane. The picture that I was expecting wasn't that at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Well, I mean, they're going to argue that the autopsy. They're going to argue, drugs in the system. But I don't know. To me, they're surely going to play the tape, aren't they?
Yep.
I mean, it'll be played for the jury, and I think a good lawyer with the prosecution could say, okay, we're going to time the amount of time the knee was on the neck, and then he stays silent and lets the time go by. I mean, that's in itself is it's hard then to say that was not the contributing actual cause to the death, whether he had drugs in his system or not.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the autopsy report brings out as well. But as they were going through this, my mind is like, just because he had drugs in his system, or if he had alcohol in his system, that doesn't mean you get to execute him on the street.
Well, right, and again, if somebody is in a position where somebody has their knee on their neck and they have nothing in their system, if it's kept there for a period of time, they most likely will die. If somebody has a knee on their neck and they have some drugs in their system, the same scenario comes to the same conclusion.
Right.
If the knee's not on the neck, drugs in the system or no drugs in the system, they're probably going to be alive.
Yeah, and what I found interesting is they were talking about the $20 bill, because nobody's really sure. They didn't produce the fake $20 bill.
Mm-hmm.
All they said is the guy looked at it and he thought it was fake. We don't have the $20 bill. I didn't see it. So even this whole thing, and I feel sorry for that guy in the store who basically got this whole ball rolling, because that's I don't know, that's just terrible.
I mean, and again, if they're the prosecution, they're going to argue, hypothetically, because they've got this video, they see him paying with they say a fake $20 bill, okay, and appears to be high. That's what they said. But here is again the bottom line. Let's say he had a counterfeit $100 bill. All right.
Right.
Do you still take him when he's already, subdued, and put your knee on his neck for the extended period of time? Yeah. I just think with the jury, I would assume there would be some sympathy that no matter what happened with him, whether he was an angel or he wasn't an angel, the fact that the knee on the neck was beyond overreach, it killed him.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I'm expecting that to be the, I'm expecting him to get the top charge, and I think he has to, which is unintentional second-degree murder. But we'll see how it plays out.
Right, and the son was saying, well, what was found in the car the day he died? You can take somebody that just robbed a bank. They capture them. They cuff them. They put them down. Do they put their knee on their neck? And because they robbed a bank, you can do that?
Yeah.
No. It's not the way it runs.
No, it's not the way it works. You're right. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1883. That was the day that cowboys went out on strike. The cowboys worked in the Texas Panhandle. Increasingly, ranch land in the region was coming under the control of large corporate ownership. Cowboys saw their way of life changing. Work as a cowboy had always been hard. They often slept under the stars or in a tent. They worked long hours at tough physical jobs. At the end of a long day, all they had to look forward to was a simple meal of camp food. But it had been the practice that cowboys could retrieve part of their pay in newly birthed calves. Some cowboys were also allowed to round up unbranded cattle. In these ways, they could create small herds for themselves and get a stake at independence. But the new corporate owners clamped down on this practice. They also placed restrictions against cowboys gambling, carrying weapons, and drinking. Seasoned cowboys from 3 ranches gathered to plan a response to the changes. They penned a letter and sent copies to 5 large ranches. It read, in part, "We, the undersigned cowboys of the Canadian River, do by these presents agree to bind ourselves into the following obligations. First, that we will not work for less than $50 per month." 24 cowboys signed the letter, but the ranchers were able to hire scab labor. The strike ended in defeat. Change had come to the Panhandle, and not in a good way. I think I'd rather ride the rain. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I just happened to see probably one of the funniest clips. The governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. I can't believe this is one of those things where you go, you got the talking point, you got the talking points, but you didn't understand them. Kristi Noem said that she was shocked about how much of the Biden plan doesn't go to infrastructure. Shocked by how much doesn't go to infrastructure. It goes into housing and pipes. I don't actually even know where to go with that. Other than to ask, does she know that housing and pipes actually infrastructure? Kind of throwing it out there. And this is the thing. They've got the talking points. There's just a lot in there. It's not what people traditionally think of as infrastructure, because we actually are thinking about human beings as part of human capital, human infrastructure, how we get things done, and making sure that while we're rebuilding our physical infrastructure, housing and pipes, that the people who are building those things, the people who are repairing our roads and bridges, that they actually make a decent living out of it. And we repair our economy. We repair our country. We repair and revive the American dream. That's what is in this for me. And sadly, South Dakota, what the are you thinking? It doesn't do anything for infrastructure. It's just housing and pipes. the new Sarah Palin. There she is. Sad stuff. But as I said at the beginning, I'm thrilled that we're moving in a better direction. I would have liked to have seen the plan be a little bit more, a little bit chunkier. But it's not bad. It's a good start. It's a good first step. And I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm just going to have to get the Democrats on board and get it passed through. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, that's where you get the podcast. Also get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Rick at